Hello, America. I'm Erick Erickson. This is the afternoon briefing. Here are the 4 stories that matter most this afternoon. Remember, you can get the full podcast of the Erick Erickson Show on Spotify, Apple, or your favorite podcast app. But these 4 stories percolated as the show was ending. You're going to want to know about them before you get home this evening. The first story is big breaking news and should concern every American, regardless of politics. The Wall Street Journal is reporting this afternoon a Defense Intelligence Agency contractor named Nathan Vilas Lash has been arrested and charged with attempting to pass classified information to a foreign government, not for money, not for ideology, but because he personally disagreed with the Trump administration. Let that sink in. Lash worked in the DIA's Insider Threat Division. He held the top secret clearance. He decided to leak national security intelligence because, in his words, he, quote, no longer believed in the current values of the United States. According to the indictment, Lash used a public park to drop and pass a USB drive off containing classified material to what he believed was a foreign contact. In reality, it was an FBI sting. But this wasn't some elaborate spy thriller. It was ideological sabotage. We've entered an era where some bureaucrats believe their personal politics supersedes their duty to the American Constitution. This is the cancer of the resistance culture, the idea that any act of subversion is justified if you oppose the administration in power. Conservatives warned about this years ago when anonymous whistleblowers and leaking intelligence officials were lionized as heroes by the press. That normalization paved the way for what we're seeing now. People with access to our most sensitive secrets acting like they're above the law because they don't like who's in charge. Let's be clear. If you hold a clearance and leak classified information, regardless of who the president is, you're a criminal, period. And if you do it in the name of virtue, you're not a patriot. You are the threat to democracy you've been warning us about. Now pay attention over the weekend and see how much coverage this story gets beyond the Wall Street Journal. In other news, the Supreme Court today handed President Trump's administration a win by allowing it to terminate temporary parole protections for migrants from several nations, including Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela. These parole programs, originally established under President Biden, were designed to offer temporary refugee status to individuals from nations facing humanitarian crises. But now, the highest court in the land has sided with the argument that such broad discretionary protections overstep the boundaries of future executive authority. Let's break this one down. From the outset, the Biden administration stretched the legal definition for these programs. Under existing immigration law, parole is meant to be granted, quote, on a case-by-case basis, typically in situations of urgent humanitarian need. What the Biden administration did, however, was attempt to create entire population-based entry paths under the guise of individual parole authority. The Supreme Court saw through that, and rightly so. If every president could just wave in half 1 million immigrants by executive order, what's the point of legislative process or the law? This is where conservatives got to stand firm. The Constitution does give Congress the authority to establish immigration law, but those laws give the executive branch the power to enforce it. Biden flipped the balance, and Trump is restoring it. To be clear, this ruling doesn't end all humanitarian protection. It just returns it to what the law actually says. If we need a better process, let Congress write one, but no president, Republican or Democrat, should be able to unilaterally rewrite immigration law under the pretense of temporary relief. The left will scream about cruelty and heartlessness, but a nation that cannot enforce its immigration law ceases to be a nation at all. By the way, the ruling also signals Donald Trump could and should revisit DACA, the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program established by Obama. The votes are there on the Supreme Court, and John Roberts in his 2020 decision said the executive has the power to end DACA. It just had to follow proper procedure, and he laid out the path for Donald Trump to do it now. In another major headline today, Elon Musk has officially stepped down from his controversial post leading the Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE. Created by President Trump early in his current term, DOGE was a special task force empowered to identify bureaucratic waste and propose drastic federal downsizing. Musk, known for launching rockets and electric cars, was brought in to detonate the red tape, and boy, did he detonate it. During his 130-day tenure, Musk announced the closure or consolidation of dozens of agencies and proposed nearly $2 trillion in spending cuts. Now, realistically, only a fraction of that's going to materialize. Estimates put it at about $150 billion of real cuts. But the symbolic value of his efforts can't be overstated. From the beginning, critics mocked Doge as unserious. They pointed to Musk's eccentric personality and Twitter tirades. They attacked him for drug use. But Musk did more to challenge the Washington swamp in 4 months than most cabinet secretaries or Congress will ever do in 4 years. He exposed how deeply entrenched inefficiency has become in the federal system, and he forced conversations about the scope and purpose of the government. Was it perfect? Of course not. But conservatives have long argued our bloated bureaucracy needs radical reform, and Elon Musk showed it can be done. Now, as he returns to the corporate ventures, Musk leaves behind a cadre of Doge loyalists who are embedded in key departments. Their job, keep cutting. And with Russ Vought now steering the fiscal agenda at OMB, the Office of Management and Budget, expect the mission to continue, perhaps with fewer memes, but just as much, if not more, momentum. Finally, good economic news. Inflation continues to cool with the Fed's preferred metric, the Personal Consumption Expenditures Index, falling to 2.1% in April. That's below expectations and the closest we've been to the Fed's 2% target in years. Core PCE, which strips out food and energy prices that are considered most volatile, also declined to 2.5%, its lowest level since 2021. Personal income is up. Consumer spending is moderate. The household savings rate hit 4.9% from 0.8% a year ago. Its best showing in 12 months. So what does that actually mean? Well, first, it's a signal the Federal Reserve's aggressive interest rate strategy might be nearing its conclusion. With inflation stabilizing, calls for rate cuts will grow louder. But the Fed's going to be cautious. After all, the full effects of President Trump's tariff expansions haven't yet worked their way into the system. The cost of those probably won't see for another month or two. And that's where the conservative dilemma comes in. On one hand, we want lower interest rates to spur growth, especially in housing and small business investment. On the other hand, inflation's decline is fragile. A premature rate cut combined with protectionist pressures from tariffs could reignite price instability. It's a balancing act. Conservatives should support monetary policies that reward savings, encourage investment, and prevent runaway inflation. But we've also got to watch our fiscal policy, especially if tariff revenue drives up or trade disruptions push up costs. In short, celebrate the progress, but keep your eyes open for what's going on out there. Now, those are our top stories today. The DIA insider has been charged with espionage because he opposed the president. It's a chilling reminder of what happens when ideology, trumps duty. The Supreme Court has sided with the Trump administration, affirming the immigration law that's got to be enforced as written, not warped by executive fiat. Elon Musk is exiting Washington after a whirlwind tour of bureaucratic disruption. Say what you will, he did shake up the system. And inflation continues to fall, but the path ahead is uncertain. Let's hope the Fed doesn't overreact in either direction. That's what matters. This is your afternoon briefing. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, like and share this. It helps us grow the show and the podcast and more. I'm Erick Erickson. Thanks for listening. Stay grounded, stay informed, and please keep the faith.